In this video, we're going to talk about clustering using Galera. So we've talked about replication, but replication, the built-in replication mechanism in MariaDB, it's rather simple, and there are some drawbacks to it. In fact, there's a whole page of limitations with replication in production environments. But Galera is a little bit different. Galera is true clustering, meaning that you can have multiple nodes reading and writing to multiple nodes all at the same time, and it has the ability to understand, how to replicate without destroying the data, right, across all these different nodes. So let's see if we can learn how to do this. If we can set up a Galera cluster. Now, to get started, first thing I want to do is I want to shut off everything we did. So if you've already completed the lab for setting up replication, we have to reverse all that, right? We have to take that replication, all those settings out for replication. So let's start with that. So first on the, I think we could do this from this server. Let me connect with MySQL. I don't remember if we can do this or not. Stop all slaves. All right, it says that worked. And if we come over here, that also stops the slave. So now the slave is disabled. And I'll tell you what else we could do is coming back over here. Let's get rid of those log items that we added, or not log, the configuration file items that we used before. All right, so if we go into Etsy, MySQL, MariaDB. Whoops. I don't know what happened there. I think something happened with my Etsy, MySQL, MariaDB.conf 50-server. That's a little better, right? I don't know what it was doing before. So I'm going to take out these lines for the bin log. Right, so it's not even going to try. We want to make sure that we have this all completely disabled. All right, so I removed those lines. I'm going to restart MariaDB. Okay, MariaDB is restarted. I'm going to go back into MySQL. We're going to go back to, and actually I'm going to restart on this other server too. All right, we're back in. And when we do show slave status, there's nothing there because it's no longer running as a slave, right? And if I come back over here, oops. And let's do a quick update. Just going to set everything to Dragon. So now if we go back over here and we select mascot from school. Oh, we have to use the right database first. And if we select, oh, whoops. Ah, it looks like it removed our additional field, right? So it's definitely disabled now. All right, so we know that replication is now disabled. So our next step is to try to set up our clustering. All right, so So back on the we're gonna use -4, right? Well, I'm gonna use -4 as my master, as well, not my master, right? So when we talk about clustering, there really is no master anymore, right? Or at least there shouldn't be. We should have the ability for some other server to take over the role of master automatically in the event of a failure of the master. So it's a little more resilient for sure. So first, let's exit from MySQL, get back into our config files. So I'm going to go into my etc directory. And let's look in MariaDB and see what files we have here. So we have a couple config files in here. If you recall, the way MySQL works and MariaDB works, when it starts the service, it's going to read in config files, right, from the various directories that it finds, and this is one of them, right? So I think we're going to try to create a separate. Well, I think about this. We can probably just put our config options all into the config file we've been using. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go into the same config file that we always use, which is 50-server. I think in some distros they or in some versions they had they had a Galera config file in here, that you could just set, you could just have your settings in a different config file, but it doesn't really matter. They can all be in one config file. So a couple config options that we have to set. Number one, for logging. So let's scroll down to logging. And we're going to add a new line here. So bin log underscore format. So the row format. We have to set some other options. And I think, let's see, I'm going to put them all the way at the bottom. So I'm going to put all of our Galero settings down here at the bottom. All right, so the first Galera setting we want is the default server, or the default storage engine. We want to set this because Galera only supports InnoDB, right? So we're going to make sure that that's set to InnoDB. And we have to set the auto increment lock. So InnoDB underscore auto inc lock mode equals 2. And our bind address is already set to 0000, so we can leave that alone, right? Because we already set the bind address. I'm looking at some common settings for Galera just to see what we need. So some other settings, we need to set WS-rep, which is the open source toolkit that's used for Galera. That has to be set to on. And then WS-rep provider is /usr lib Galera. Hopefully this is the right path. All right, then we got to come up with a cluster name. I'm just going to call mine Info366. All right, we got to put the IP addresses in here, which I should be able to get from here. So I'm just getting it from the, so that's the first address. And then our second one is going to be this one. And remember, if you restart between attempts at the lab, you're going to have to go in and add additional nodes here, right? So, or you're going to have to change the IP addresses rather, because every time you restart your machine, you know what? I'm wrong about this. We don't want to use the public IP address. I'm sorry. Let me delete all this. My apologies. We need to make sure we use the IP address of our servers. So, for example, actually, I could get it right from the console. The console should have it. Yeah. So it's 10.128.0.3 and 0.4, and those are not going to change. That's what reminded me. Those are not going to change. So it's 10.128.0.3 and 10.128.0.4. And let me just double check those. So 10.128.0.3 and 0.4, so we're good. You can get yours the same way, or you can use the ifconfig command as well. That'll work too. All right, so we got our cluster addresses set up. Then we have to set the synchronization method. So wsrep underscore sst underscore method equals our sync. All right, and then finally, wsrep underscore node underscore address. That's going to be the address for this particular node, which is 10.128.0.3. And then this node is going to have a name. And I'm just going to make it the host name. Which is info-366-4. All right, there should be the options that we need for Galera to run. The top two are just generic options, right, that we want to set. We want to make sure that InnoDB is the default engine and that the AutoInc lock mode is set to 2. And then all of this stuff are the Galera settings. So these next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, right? So that's all of our settings for Galera. All right, so we're going to save this. Oh, whoops, sorry. All right, so I'm going to write that. Now I'm going to stop, just because I want to make sure I don't forget to stop this.